Hey, next question is from Eric Blake. What do you know about that? Hey, hello, Bill. Hey, Eric. How's it going? So kudos to Tulsi Gabbard for sticking in after the entire party apparatus kept keeping her down. So I'm curious what her chances are and what's motivating her to stay in as long as she has. I think, I think, you know what it's like. I think dropping out of the Democratic primary in 2020 was like leaving a football game with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter because you were down by 3 touchdowns and you were sure the game was over and you just wanted to get your car and beat the traffic. And then on the radio, you find out that your team came back and rallied and you won by 3 points and you missed it. That's what I think. She is still there on the podium, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, look at her possible outcomes here. Bernie's done, which means it's her and Biden. Biden's fallen apart. I think there must be a large number of people who were once in this race who are now thinking, why did I get out? I think getting out was kind of a panic move. I think looking back on it, it's recent history, but I think what probably happened was, okay, so we got all these people, we got 5 or 6 serious contenders, and then Bernie comes out of the gate with the first 3 that just by coincidence happened to be very strong for him. And then everybody realized, oh my God, we're going to nominate an actual by God socialist. And so Biden suddenly becomes there. And now people are saying, well, now it's just Biden and Bernie, so get out of the race and support Biden. And that's what, Buttigieg and all the rest of these guys drop out and do that. And now Bernie continues to tank, and it looks like it's all Biden, but Biden is not going to make it. He's not going to make it to the convention. He certainly will not. He will certainly not make it to the November election. When I say won't make it, I'm not saying he'll be dead by then, but I am saying he will be utterly incoherent, more so than usual. And so Tulsi could find herself at the Democratic convention and be the only person that has run the entire primary with a chance of being elected, only because she's the only one capable of moving under her own power. I mean, that alone is the only reason why she should be there. I think it's brilliant. And I think a lot of people like Buttigieg and so on are saying, man, why did I let them force me out of this thing, Because I'm no doubt that the Democratic Party put enormous pressure on all of these people to get out, and not only get out, but support Biden, stop siphoning votes away from Biden, and so on. But my God, I just want to say one more thing about this, and I think it's time for me to go home. And I'll do one more after this, but then I want to go home. But here's the thing. Biden was prone to gaffes, and obviously, and there's no question that Biden's mental abilities have been degrading, certainly during the course of the Trump administration, and they weren't particularly stellar even at his prime. But without question, we've watched a tremendous decline in his memory. And that is a sign of the onset of Alzheimer's. And then a sign that occurs later, and I know this from personal experience, is after the memory signs start to arrive, once you start to see this person can't remember things that they should be able to remember, in many cases, probably most cases, dementia sets in. And dementia, in most of the cases, is like a feral level of aggression. And Joe Biden has always tried to say, I'm a friendly Joe, everybody loves Joe. He's not. He's a mean guy. He's mean to his staff and so on. But he's at least had it under control. What we're seeing now is that if Biden is going to go to a meeting of, go to a rally of his supporters and basically tell a guy wearing a hard hat, a union guy in a hard hat, telling him to F off, then the dementia is going to essentially evaporate the only thing that Biden had going for him, which was, oh, he's a nice guy. I mean, maybe not the smartest guy in the world, but he's a regular guy. I mean, things like Obama. I'm an Obama Biden, a Biden Obama, whatever he said. That kind of thing. That kind of thing is the kind of thing that you can make a mistake if every word you say is watched. You can occasionally, trip over words and stuff. But to go to a rally and say, "I'm Joe Biden. I'm running for Senate, and I want you to take a look at me," and and to repeatedly forget which office you're running for, that's And what does that say about the Democratic Party? What does it say about the party leadership, which are the most cynical bunch of mean-spirited, disgraceful, honor-free, character-free, morality-free bastards that I've ever seen in this country? What does it say about them for propping this guy up and hoping he can limp across the finish line? And and if it seems to me that that watching Biden's deterioration is corroding the sane Democrats' belief in their party further and further and further and further and further. The people who used to be Democrats because they were hardworking blue-collar workers look at this whole leftward shift, and then they look at a guy who's like going to become a socialist. He's going to eliminate, coal and natural gas, and he's going to eliminate all these things. He's going to eliminate their jobs, basically. And they're thinking, my God, they're going to elect a socialist. And then they go to Biden, and then they see Biden in action, and they see how clearly incapacitated he is. You think, and I'm sure this is the case, that what's left of the decent, hardworking Democrats in the world are thinking to themselves, I can't do this. I can't. There's no place for me to go. No place to go. This will be probably. We'll see if we can have a conversation about this next week. If it turns out that we don't have, to cancel the show because we're busy on body bag duty, which I suspect is not going to happen. But I've been having discussions and been thinking a bit about this. Roger Simon article actually got me started thinking about this. It is starting to look like that there's a real possibility that that the 2020 election might be the end of the Democratic Party. And I'll just make that case real quick. And I was going to take the next question, but it's a coronavirus question. So let me just end with this. So in modern history, which is by definition the time that I've been aware of things, that's the definition of modern history, is how long have I been aware of something. That's modern history. And you can take that to the bank, and it's nice because it continues to change as I forget things and as I learn new things. But in modern history, we've seen two cases where the Democratic Party was convinced that they lost because they weren't liberal enough, and then they launched a real liberal candidate. We saw it in 1972 when they nominated McGovern against Nixon, and we saw it in 1984 when they nominated Mondale against Reagan. And both of those were landslide Republican victories because the left was convinced that they had not gone far left enough, because the left doesn't have to go through what we go through. We have to hear about left-wing policies because, number one, we're subject to them, and number two, it's all over the place in the media. We understand what the left is about. We hear their arguments all the time. They don't hear ours. They just don't. Was it Pauline Kael who said, I can't believe Nixon won. I don't know a single person that voted for him, and she doesn't. But that's the echo chamber. So stay with me on this now. In 1972, they tried it, and they got walloped. And that led to Jimmy Carter, who was certainly perceived to be more moderate. In 1984, they got walloped, which led to Dukakis, who was just plain incompetent and kind of a Mondale light. But in 1992, led to Bill Clinton, who was the Democratic, he's the Democratic super candidate. Appeals to everybody and charming, and he's slow about the whole communism thing and so on. So here's the thing. In 1972 and in 1984, they had a bench. They had a bench of young politicians who were up and coming and capable and who had national exposure or starting to get it, and certainly had the charisma. They had the ability to get elected to the top offices. And not only is the existing Democratic Party candidates in their, Donald Trump is the youngest of them, of the three final contenders for the Democrats, and he's 73. Not only do they appear to be short of young people, but during the 2020 primary season, the 2020 primaries is the Democratic showcase for their upcoming talent. It's a determination to see who's going to be the nominee, yes, but what it really is, it's like, and here's our 2024 model of the brand new Trabant. And it looks exactly like the 2023 model. And so whatever up-and-comers there are in the Democratic Party, we saw on the stage, and people just utterly rejected them. So let's just look ahead. I don't see any... The only way that I see Donald Trump losing this election is if people like you and me are convinced that there's no way that Donald Trump can lose this election and we don't go out and vote. But barring unforeseen circumstances, if Trump wallops Biden or Bernie or whoever, the Democratic Party is also split demographically. All of the young Democrats are far to the left of the older Democrats, which means that as a voting bloc inside the Democratic Party, they're increasing. And they are not running against the Republicans. They're running against the system. They want... I thought I saw something move. They want a complete restructuring of the system. Okay, so now 2020 is over, and Trump is reelected, and they're all bitter, and then you basically got this. What happens on the first Wednesday of November when everybody's so furious that Trump was reelected? Do you really think that these young radicals are going to come out and vote for Biden? Because they're not. They've already said they won't. And they can't win without him. And what happens after that? I think what very likely happens is that the Democratic Party does what happened to the Whigs. It was the Whigs versus the Democrats. And then enough of the Whigs decided to take this radical position of being an anti-slavery party specifically, and became the Republican Party. And that left the existing Whigs in a pickle. Many of them felt the same way that the Republicans did, because the Republicans were born from the Whigs. So many, if not most of the Whigs, simply became Republicans. But those few Whigs who were pro-slavery couldn't join the Republican Party, so they became Democrats. And they didn't stay Whigs. This is my point. They didn't stay Whigs because they knew that Whigs can't win. They can't. You can't take half of their party away and then expect to win. So I think this is exactly what the Democrats are looking at. The socialist part of the party, the young part of the party, is not going to sit there and say, well, we'll wait till we're 70 and then we'll give a shot. They're going to conclude the way that they always have concluded. They're going to say to themselves, in their own unique little fascist fashion, they're going to say to themselves, well, we gave socialism a try through democracy. Now we're going to have to go and get it through other means. And so they're going to likely, if I had to bet, I'd say they would start something that looked like the American Socialist Party, something like that. And they'll take 20% of the population with them and maybe 30, 40% of the Democratic Party, something like that. If they do, if they split off into a radical wing of their party, then that means that the Democratic Party that remains, the rump of the Democratic Party, the ass's ass, if you will not be able to win because enough of their party has left. Now they're two parties. And that means that all of the young people, all the enthusiasm, all of the demographic growth would go to the American Socialist Party, or whatever you want to call it. And that would leave the people who are stranded in what's left of the former Democratic Party with a choice. Do we want to go join the socialists, or do we want to bite the bullet and become unenthusiastic Republicans. And that's the only choice they have. And I didn't think that such a thing was really possible. But that's exactly, apparently, from my reading, that's exactly what happened to the Whigs. They basically spun their ideology, the core of their ideology, spun out from the Whigs to form the Republicans. And then people had to decide, do we want to go with a more ideologically pure version of our core ideology and join this anti-slavery party? Or are we so pro-slavery that we're going to bite the bullet and become Democrats? And that's what happened. And that's what could happen. Not saying what it is, but it's leaning that way. If the demographics were reversed, if it turned out that it was the older Democrats who were the socialists, then I would say that the loss in 2020 to Donald Trump would mean that the people looking at the future of the Democratic Party would say, okay, we got to go back to being more moderate. But that's not the case. If they lose, and I think they're going to lose, and I think they're going to lose big, significant numbers of these people are utterly convinced that they would have lost it. There's a guy in our building here, and I caught a glimpse of him once, who's got a bumper sticker that says Bernie beats Trump. And when I have a little bit of free time, I might leave a polite message under his windshield wiper saying that Bernie couldn't even beat Biden. And then I will repeat, Biden. But they believe it. And mark my words, there's one thing I'm sure of, and I'm sure of this because I've heard it from many different people and I've seen it everywhere. If they nominate Trump, if they nominate Biden and that looks like the case, and Biden loses and that looks like the case, then half of the Democratic Party, or a third of it at least, the young third, the social justice warriors, will be convinced that he lost because he was not socialist enough. And that's when they're going to pack their bags and go. Because I think we can all agree that Bernie 2024 is not the kind of investment you would want to make right at this point in hats and T-shirts. So already these young socialists are saying things like, "Well, Bernie kind of showed us the way, and we're going to have a post-Bernie kind of socialism, and it was Bernie who gave us the hope." And they're turning Bernie into kind of Lenin, Bernie's not Lenin. Bernie's Lenin. Last thing, and then I'm going home. I was taking a shower, and because I do that occasionally.